Common debate practice requires the defining of terms, and while this isn't a debate per se, I'll just go ahead and do it anyway. Merriam-Webster defines gatekeeping as one that tends or guards a gate. Now, that really doesn't have much to do with what I want to talk about outside of the metaphorical sense, so I'll just go with their second definition, which reads, a person who controls access. Now, you can get a sense of the way that society, by and large, regards the idea of gatekeeping when you look at the Urban Dictionary definitions. I'll just read you the first one. It reads, and I quote, when someone takes it upon themselves to decide who does or does not have access or rights to a community or identity. Bit of a negative connotation in the tone of that statement, wouldn't you say? Well, I don't know if I would count gatekeeping as wholly negative. There are actually some positive aspects. Now, I don't intend for this video to get flagrantly political, but I really don't think there's a way to keep politics out of the conversation given the nature of our current societal climate. Everything is political. First, I want to get into what I see gatekeeping as, and then why it's important. Let's look at a hypothetical gatekeeper. We'll use Dungeons & Dragons for this example since it's something I'm pretty familiar with. So let's say you're a dungeon master for a group of 4 of your friends. You've crafted this world from the ground up. You've covered geography, economy, political systems, rivaling factions, fully fleshed out NPCs, etc., etc. You've gone for realism in your world, the way that you imagine it would be, given the way that each individual aspect of your society interacts with one another. You figure the real world can be dark and evil. Why not have some of those aspects in your world? But give your players superhuman abilities and the power to change it if they wish. You give them descriptions of their character, gracefully dismembering enemies, disfigured monsters, busty bar winches, and so on. So one day, one of your players, we'll call him Nate, comes to you and says that his girlfriend, we can call her Natalie, wants to spend some more time with him and wants to join the group. I mean, the more the merrier, right? You'd love to get more people into your hobby. She loves Harry Potter, but she also likes squirrels for some weird reason, so you help her make a warlock with a little blue squirrel as a familiar. You just reskinned a pseudo-dragon, so it's really no big deal. First game comes around and you think it goes well. Your players commandeer a slave vessel headed for a mine, kill all the sailors and slavers on board, and land on a nearby abandoned island. From there, the newly freed slaves decide that they're grateful and would like to help out in any way they can. Your players agree, well, we could use a safe refuge here to rest and recharge from weeks at sea. Could also be a good opportunity to get some business flowing. Get a stake in the economy, make some money, The session ends and your players are satisfied with the way everything went. They feel as if they accomplished something today. Soon after everyone leaves, you get a text from Nate saying that Natalie doesn't like all of the blood and the gore, and she especially doesn't like that there's slavery, but she wants to keep playing. He asks if you can tone it down a bit for her. You respond that everyone else enjoys the way that you run the game, including him, up until the point Natalie got involved. He confirms that he likes the way you run the game, but what she wants, she gets. She is fucking him after all. So, what are you as a dungeon master to do? You've got 4 people who like the way you've created and managed your world, and you've got a newcomer who doesn't. Do you change the way your, and I emphasize the word your, world works, and the way that you run the game to suit the whims of someone who just wants to take part in something that people already find great value in? Is that fair to you? Is it fair to the other players? Anyone who's got any sort of backbone should be telling themselves that they need to go and tell this chick to go fuck herself. But in kinder words, of course. It'd benefit everyone else to gatekeep the shit out of this game. If Natalie doesn't like the way that things are, she has the choice to either deal with it or not take part at all. And before anyone goes off and says that I'm being sexist with a hypothetical situation, let me tell you that 2 of our hypothetical players are hypothetically female. Or at least that's what they hypothetically look like. You really can't make those assumptions anymore, I guess. The fact of the matter is, gatekeeping in itself protects the integrity of any idea that is found valuable from bad actors. And to be honest, it really seems as though bad actors are rampant in Hollywood, no pun intended, and in the offices of creators in charge of major IP. Take the Star Wars sequel trilogy, for example. It's widely regarded as a bastardization of the franchise as a whole. After watching the character evolution from a low-down smuggler in A New Hope to a revolutionary devoted to the cause of the rebellion by The Return of the Jedi, the writers at Disney thought it appropriate to degrade Han Solo's character to a deadbeat dad who abandoned his son and fell back into smuggling. All this only to needlessly be killed by his own son, thrown into a pit, and have the planet destroyed to make sure he doesn't come back. Subversions of expectation achieved. Now, I could go on and on about the issues that I have with other franchises and IPs, but I really want to take a look at what the root of the issue is. And I think that the root is actually a couple of different roots at the same time. The first root I see is that of wealthy interests. Disney, Amazon, Netflix, Warner Brothers, etc. It's much cheaper to take a property which already exists and has a fan base, revive it, reconfigure it, repackage it, and shove it through people's TV screens than it is to get an original idea off the ground. Disney, in my opinion, is the greatest offender. I mean, just look at all the Marvel and Star Wars spin-off shows and films. They're becoming like, as Bilbo once said, butter spread over too much bread. I haven't personally watched a Star Wars property since the opening half of The Last Jedi. I fell asleep in the theater. Nor have I watched a Marvel property since Avengers Endgame. The entertainment market is absolutely inundated with subpar installations for the sole purpose of getting ahead in an attention economy. And you know what? I can't say I blame them. I mean, that's business, baby. They've got shareholders to report to. And it puts asses in seats, too. There's no denying that. The problem, at least for me anyway, is the sheer volume. It gets stale, for one, but beyond that, there comes a need for more and faster labor. Shit gets sloppy. Writing suffers, production suffers, and the overall quality takes a turn for the worse. Just take a look at the last couple of seasons of Game of Thrones. I haven't heard anyone talk about that one in a while, have you? When's the last time you actually had a desire to rewatch the series? Probably not since that dumpster fire of a season 8 ended, if I were to guess. That's what happens when showrunners get lazy and quit caring about the story. I haven't even read the Song of Ice and Fire books, and even I felt betrayed. That's how invested I was. It just goes to show the lack of care and respect for whatever story you're working with causes everything to suffer. Meanwhile, Season 8 brought in well over $500 million while only costing $90 million to produce. And trust me, I use the term only in its loosest available sense. But we'll go back in time a little bit to Season 6. Now, there were some good episodes peppered in here and there, but quality overall had taken a dive by that point. The production budget for all 10 episodes rounded out to about $100 million, yet yielded a whopping $530 million in revenue for HBO. So, if you're getting a 530% return on investment, what motive is there for actually improving quality? The fact is, even if people were just hate watching the show, an average of 44.2 million people were still watching it. And yes, I do include myself in that category. Now, let's move on to the second root of the issue at hand, postmodernism. Well, a more specific aspect of postmodernism called deconstruction. Now, deconstruction is a school of thought which questions the distinctions between two binaries, the primary and the opposition, particularly in modes of language. In essence, it's a school of thought which picks language apart piece by piece in an effort to figure out not just what a piece of work says, but what it does. It would ask questions like, how does this collection of words affect one's perceptions of the reality of the world around them? Deconstruction breaks language down to its base where it loses all meaning, since meanings of words are simply constructs of the words following them to give them context. The literature on this is relatively incoherent, so I won't try to expand on it any further than that, but you can check out the writings of Jacques Derrida if you're curious about more on that. But perhaps its incoherence is actually the point. If a word is only bound to the words around it which lend to its meaning, it's left floating in a state of limbo with no foundation. And if that's the case, then the language used to communicate the ideas renders the ideas themselves meaningless. Do you see where I'm going with this? These principles have inevitably led to ideas which question the lines between men and women, black and white, gay and straight. Remember the primary and the opposition, giving rise to feminist theory, gender theory, critical theory, and even critical race theory. All propose that there is a primary beneficiary of privilege bestowed upon them by the nature of language and attempt to deconstruct said language in the name of equity. Now, if I may insert my own layman's opinion here at this point, I'd say that this removes agency from the individual and, by extension, responsibility. How can a woman blame herself for not succeeding in life since man is so oppressive by nature? How can a black man succeed with the white man being privileged from birth? How can a woman clearly know that she's a woman when she oftentimes finds herself preferring the company of others who identify as men? The nature of deconstruction attempts to break down any perceived hierarchical power structures, so to speak, and blurs the lines of any discernible binary, all at the same time. This all leads to, in my own estimation, a certain kind of nihilism. Nothing matters because nothing has any inherent meaning. Now, at this point, you're probably asking yourself, what the fuck does any of this incoherent babble have to do with gatekeeping? Well, now that I've got all of that scholarly bullshit out of the way, I'll tell you. If you've been paying attention at all to any sort of entertainment media over the last couple of years, you'll notice a few things becoming more prominent. Casting women in overtly masculine roles, giving them masculine features. You'll find tiny women who are able to kick the shit out of any 6'3", 250-pound man. Think Abby and Ellie from The Last of Us 2. You see traditionally white characters recast in films by black actors, like Jodie Turner-Smith cast as Anne Boleyn, an actual white historical figure. In the end, it doesn't really matter, right? We're all the same. Differences are only societal constructions of language, right? Well, that is until it comes to money. See, it really only matters when the bigwigs make money. So, while we have freedom of speech here in the US and these ideas run rampant, corrupting guaranteed moneymakers, Disney is busy putting black characters in the backgrounds of its posters for its Chinese audience. In November of 2017, Amazon bought the rights to 150 pages in the back of J.R.R. Tolkien's The Return of the King for $250 million. They then proceeded to hand over the responsibility of adapting these nigh unadaptable pages to two randos with no credits to their name except for a rejected draft of one of the Star Trek movies. What has ensued is predictably exactly what I've been talking about this whole time. Who cares if the intent of the text was to be a strictly English mythology? Amazon wouldn't want to be labeled as racist on Twitter. Just get it done and get it out the door, baby. There's money to be raked in. Tolkien only felt like England had no mythology since the Norman conquest of 1066, and he felt like it deserved one. But that's just the product of toxic, nationalistic, and capitalistic thinking. Those days are over, and we've evolved past it. And so, ideologues who were brainwashed in college in this deconstructionist theory can push their narratives forward by breaking down established properties until they lose all of the meaning that they originally had, since that meaning was, in their words, problematic. And these mega media corporations either ideologically agree since they all graduated from the same few universities, Or they could just give a shit less about the quality of the finished product because the brand itself guarantees asses in seats. Why would a production company ever fund a new idea when we have a guaranteed $500 million opening weekend for the next installment of Sonic the Hedgehog? And just a side note here, but if you weren't aware of Yuri Bezmenov, I encourage you to look into it. Everything he warned us about is happening, and I don't doubt that it's just a coincidence. All of that said, there are still good things out there. Not everything is a contrived mess with either overt or subliminal intersectional messaging. Some shit's still good. Most of that shit is original, but I digress. That doesn't mean that we can let things that we care about go by the wayside. There is value in tradition. There's a reason civilization has come so far. As Dr. Jordan Peterson says, you're in the zone when you have the perfect balance of order and chaos, progression and tradition. Rework the things that need it. Hold on to the things of value. And with that, I'll tell you, stop supporting things that bastardize what you love. Create new things. Hold on to what you value, and for fuck's sake, gatekeep it. Anyways, if you like what I'm doing here, don't forget to like and subscribe if you want more. I don't really consider myself a particularly well-learned man when it comes to this subject matter, but it's something I've been wanting to talk about for a little while, especially with everything that's been going on with The Lord of the Rings. So if you stuck with me this long, I really appreciate it. Have yourselves a good day, and go pick up something heavy.